the Executive Chairman, Dr. Martin Mwinga, Chief Executive Officer, First Capital, Ms. Laina Amutenya, CEOs, heads of institutions from both the public and private sector, stakeholders of the Namibian housing sector, the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're very close to a Friday. Surely the spirit should be slightly more elevated. Good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all here. My name is Stacey Pinto, and I will be directing our proceedings this afternoon. It is lovely to see you all once again. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our host, First Capital Group, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you this afternoon to the official presentation of the Namibia Housing Sector Study by First Capital Group Research and Advisory Division. I think in this room, we all agree that housing is not just about providing shelter. It touches on so many points such as economic growth, financial inclusion, social well-being, and the opportunities that many of our people have or don't have access to. And so I think it's very befitting that today we see a representation from across the housing sector value chain. Whether you're in academia, public sector, private sector, financing, policy, you're very, very welcome, and we absolutely invite you to be part of this discussion today. I think this discussion is also crucially important because in many ways, Namibia finds itself at an inflection point. An inflection point because whichever way it turns as a country determines what happens to Namibia in the next 30, 40, 50, 100 years. It is at the precipice of greatness in many sectors. We see what is going on in different industries. But all of that really is estimated or evaluated based on the level of impact it has, equally on a matter such as housing. And I think the other reason this inflection point for Namibia is crucially important is that the direction we take as a nation will highly depend on two things: data and evidence. And I think that's why this study this evening is very, very important, because it provides an evidence-based assessment of the current state of the Namibian housing sector, highlighting the challenges, highlighting what we've done well, what has worked, what hasn't worked, but most importantly, how do we get it right? And so if you're in this room, I encourage you to not treat tonight simply as a presentation. Treat tonight as a point or an opportunity for you to explore on what we need to get right as a sector. I think also very telling of why tonight is important is because NDP 6 and Vision 2030, both of them commit to unlocking housing opportunity at scale by 2030. How far are we from 2030? That's scary. And I think this report would tell us where we're sitting in terms of that ambition and that goal. For you and me, that says in very clear terms that we have a lot of work to do. And so tonight, the purpose is not just presenting a finding. I think what we want to encourage the room to consider tonight as is a collaborative work, a platform that sees the entire value chain of the housing sector coming together, unpacking what this study is saying, but most importantly, figuring out how we're going to take the work forward. I do want to charge you a little bit. I came with a couple of words that I want the spirit of these words to permeate this room. I have a couple, and I'm going to ask a few of you to contribute to what those words are. These are the words: innovation, shared vision, collaboration, unlocking, solutions. As I mentioned, I want for the spirit of these words to permeate this room, because that is the tone with which tonight is set. What other words do you think should permeate this room and determine how we take tonight forward? Any takers? Madam CEO? What word do you want to add to what tonight should carry? There's innovation, there's vision, shared vision, there's collaboration, there's unlocking, there's solutions. What else? Accountability. I love that. Executive Chair, any word from you, sir? Vision, that's mine. You can't take that one. Anyone else? Any words that should permeate and hang around this room as we have tonight's discussion and presentation? Go ahead. Optimism. Love that. Love that. We need loads of that, considering we have 4 years to go. Anybody else? Any other words? Yes, sir. Affordability. I absolutely love that one. Very, very key. Thank you, sir. Any other words? Yes, ma'am. Action. Absolutely. Spot on. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Inclusion. Love that. This room is so switched on. This is amazing. Thank you. I love inclusion because that is ultimately what it's about. Any other words? Yes, sir. Accessibility. Love it. Thank you, sir. I absolutely take that one. There was another hand close to you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, restoration of dignity. That's a big one. That's a big one. A big one because in many ways, housing is about that. It is about restoring dignity to a people that didn't have access to any. Imagine a pensioner or an older, one of our elderlies, finally getting access to that home that they've never ever owned. To the people who work in the housing sector, that document might just be a piece of paper that you have to process. But to the person sitting opposite you, that is everything. It's their dignity restored. And I hope that in the way that we do our work, we're acutely aware of what this means from a personal level. Restoration of dignity. That's big. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Happiness. Oh, I love that. Happiness. I absolutely love that. I actually feel happy saying the word. The joy, right? I think sometimes we forget what the bottom line means for the people we serve and help. All things being equal, should everyone have access to affordable housing, imagine how much of a happy nation we would be. Did you know that some countries actually have a rating for how much joy is in a country? Did you know that? It's a thing. So thank you so very much for highlighting that, sir. Anyone else to close us off for the evening? Yes, sir? Investment. The money by which it all happens. Without the money in the room, the joy, the happiness, the restoration of dignity, all of it cannot happen. And I think there's different pockets of money in this room that should be part of this conversation, not only the conversation, but also the solutions and the way forward for the Namibian housing sector. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you're very, very welcome this afternoon. I'd like to proceed with the program and call on Dr. Martin Mwinga. But before he comes up, I hope he doesn't side-eye me for this, but I do want to introduce him slightly so you know the depth of work that has gone into this study and really just appreciate how much work has gone in. Dr. Martin Mwinga is the executive chairman of First Capital, Namibia. He's an economist, an entrepreneur, an author, and a public policy researcher with more than 30 years of experience across banking, investment management, housing finance, economic policy, and he's widely recognized for his research and publications on economics, finance, housing, and public policy. He is the author of the Namibia Housing Sector Study, of course with support, that is being presented today. I'd like to tell you a very funny story about the man that is about to come on stage. I started my career, I think, in about 2016. I had just finished my master's in international trade law and trying to find my feet. You know, you're new to the industry, trying to see who the big ones are, who to learn from. And Doc, I've never told you this, but this man's name was everywhere. Talk about economics, talk about policy, talk about, it was always a certain mysterious Martin Mwinga. I never got the pleasure to meet him, during my career. I met him officially last year, the year prior. And I was in awe because finally, here's the guy. And he put such an impression on me because he is the most humble person I have ever met. The name that preceded him made him sound as though he's scary and, well, I think to other people he's scary. I don't know. Are there people that are scared? We don't know. But for me, he was absolutely humble, full of wisdom, just wanting to teach the next generation. And in my hallmark of people I hold in high regard, he absolutely is one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Mwinga to the stage.
You're not showing.
Could we have some support, please?
Come again. Where do you switch on? The screen is off. If I want forward, this. Yeah, just right, left. This light. Once they are live. Okay. So we close this one. Then we do the other one. Okay. Good afternoon. As I was introduced, my name is Martin Mwinga. Unfortunately, this is not my voice. I've got a flu. My name is Martin Mwinga. I have been in the industry for some time. And I've been with First Capital since the company started. The study we are presenting to you today is a study that has been ongoing for some time. Because we are probably the only fund manager in Namibia that specializes in mortgage finance. I used to work for RMB, Asset Management, and from there, that's when we started First Capital, specializing in mortgage finance. So we do these studies also to help ourselves, but over time, we also do them to help the country. I'm quite sure that most of you seated here, in one way or another, you are involved in the housing sector. All of us, we live in a house. We make our livelihood from housing. It's a very exciting sector. It can bring you down, just like it brought a lot of people in the US during the global financial crisis. You know, that was underpinned by the housing crisis. But if you manage it well, it can also uplift you. So our company, basically, we specialize, First Capital specializes in housing. And then we develop products that are specialized in that area. So about this study today, I see it's not showing. This study started a long time ago. It's not easy to do a study like this in Namibia because data is a challenge. And at one point, we thought we could collect data ourselves. But it proved to be difficult. So I must use this opportunity to thank the NSA, Namibia Statistics Agency. They really have done wonders in terms of producing statistics, especially the 2023 population and household census. That came at the right time for us, and it's a one that now helped us to start building the data that we want. So the main source of our data in our study is the 2023 population and household income survey. Yes, we used pieces of other information, but that was the main source. I'm wondering, the technology is failing us? Okay. While they are busy sorting it out, What I'm presenting to you today is basically the results of the study. Our study is a 200-page, so 200 pages study, 15 chapters. So it needs us to spend the whole day discussing, presenting it. So today I'm going to present to you findings from that study and also map the future going forward. I'll do half of the study, and the CEO of First Capital, Laina Mtenya, who will be introduced later, will take over from me. She will do the last part. We want to make it brief so that the party can start. So our study is broken into themes. The first theme that we are going to look is that theme 1 is understanding Namibia's housing problem, challenges. What are those challenges that we are facing? You have heard many people saying, I'm going to do this in the housing market. There's no unanimous benchmark. In fact, Namibia is one country that has no readily available statistics, but we spend so much money in housing. And one day it will take us by surprise. So we'll look at theme 1, which is Namibia's housing challenge. Then we'll look at what is really the problem. If you look at since independence, we have spending money. Government spend money. The commercial banks, almost 40% of the lending activities of banks are linked to mortgages. Billions and billions have gone into the housing market. But we are not close to solving the problem. We have got measurement problems in Namibia. Someone will tell you that the backlog is so much, let's spend, so you base your decision on that. Well, it's not true. So what we did in this study is to say there has been claims that this is the current situation. Is it true? So we went back to find out the truth. Now you recall that even the AIDS administration, when it started, the first thing that they did is say we'll build 50,000 houses. It shows the priority, that housing is a priority, and that's why they came. But at the same time, unless we understand, define the problem carefully, we will, 5 years down the line, back to square one. We will propose in theme 4, theme 5, the approach that we think can contribute to resolving. You will never resolve the housing problem all over the world. So I've spoken a bit on our involvement in the housing sector, and some of you might be asking, but why spending so much effort to produce a 200-page report? And you'll find in this report, it will be available on our website, I think from tomorrow. Yes, there are certain things we will not share in the report because we are capitalists. But a lot of information will be available for you if you want to set up an SPV, you want to set up this and this. This report will be very helpful. When we set up the First Capital Housing Fund in 2009, I read a PhD thesis of a professor in SA, a legal scholar. And I wanted to understand the mortgage securitization and how to structure those products. And I remember I engaged that professor. I said, Professor, I read your PhD thesis from A to Z. I want you to be my partner. I want to make a proposal to establish a fund. After engaging through with the professor told me, you know what, Martin? I think you understand my research better than me. I'm now old, so I'm not going to get involved. So basically, the point I'm making that we in First Capital benefited from other people's research. And we also want this research to benefit others. I can tell you, if you sit down and go through this report, number of solutions that we are suggesting, and what government is trying to do, you may find that you might create something for yourself. Yeah, it starts small, but you can get somewhere. So it's from that angle that we encouraged to do this report, and also to really see how we can solve problems. So without showing here, I've got a number of graphs really that I wanted to show. I can't. No, okay. Good. So we identified a number of problems that are in the housing market. Why we are failing to resolve the issues in the housing market. And the problem number one is the rate at which we are urbanizing. You know, in 1991, 70% of Namibia's population lived in the rural areas, and only 29 or 30% lived in town. But by 2023, when they did the census, people living in towns, 50% of the Namibian population now live in urban centers, and the 50% are in the rural areas. That's already problem number one that you need to resolve if you are to resolve the issue of housing. Because if people are migrating at that rate, coming to cities, to towns, looking for opportunities, then irrespective of how much money you are going to pump in the housing sector, it might be a challenge for you to resolve that sector. So, and I can give you examples. South Korea experienced similar problem. So they had a huge migration of people coming from the rural area. And they came up with a policy where they'll tell the people to say that, okay, if you go and work in the rural areas, you only pay 50% of your tax. If you go and set up business in rural areas, for 5 years, you are not paying tax. So they started incentivizing. So that means if you have got an entity here and you are located in Opuo, set up your factory there, but supplying, then you don't pay tax. In that way, they were able now to block the migration of rural people. So that was a long-term strategy, but it worked within a short time. It needed leadership, and they enforced it, and they managed it. Those villages were converted into small towns, and no one wanted to come to the city because they were making more money than. So urbanization really is a major challenge that even if today government announces that we are going to do this and this and this and this, as long as some of these challenges are there, during President Nayoma, Pohamba, the late Hagegengo, Mbumba, they also did the same. And unless we twist our strategy, then we will build so many houses, but we will not be able to resolve some of those issues. So urbanization. Housing problem 2 is rising informal settlements. Just to give you an example, in 1991, 15,000 people resided in informal settlements, in shacks and all those. By 2024 and 25, that number had increased to 217,000. It has short from 15,000 to 217,000. But that does not mean that the houses were not built. The same period, 1991, formal household living in modern houses increased from 73,000 to 251,000. So a lot of modern houses were built, but they were not enough to absorb the influx of informal settlement. You know, when you see an informal settlement, it's an equation, it's an adjustment within the equation of housing. It's an adjustment. So that's where, if demand and supply does not reach equilibrium, the adjustment mechanism is informal settlement. So a lot of people will go there. If you go to informal settlements now, there are teachers, there are nurses, there are every type of profession, you find them there. I know our CEO, Laina, when she went to Caribbean, she visited their informal settlement. She couldn't believe what she saw. She said they've got one of the best informal settlements, that she wanted to stay there. She wanted a house there. Yeah, so they've upgraded. They've upgraded their it's water, electricity, everything. So most people now, because of those services now, they will just say, go there and get their land. At the same time, you know that in 2013, under the leadership of President Pohamba, we introduced the mass housing. The mass housing was massive. It started in October 2013. It had a vision, clear vision, that by 2030, you see, most of us think the mass housing was a short-term thing. No, it was a long-term plan with the intention of building 189,000 houses. It was aligned to Vision 2030. And it was implemented. The pilot was 2013 to 2014 to 2015. And within that pilot period, in fact, they were able to beat the target of 8,000 because they said, we are trying this. We will want to see if we can build 8,000 houses. They were able to beat that. That's why you see under the late President Hage Geingob, we had the highest modern house formed or built. It's the impact. I couldn't understand why that was the case, because from 2015-16, we see a huge spike in housing stock. And there were almost 11,000 houses per year that was built over that period. Then as researchers, we said, no, it can't be true. What really happened? Because we all believed that the mass housing was a failure. It was discarded. So we went back. I engaged some of the civil servants, retired civil servants who were involved. And they explained that what the late president did when he took over, he did not start new things. He went into ministries, all the funded projects that were dormant, that were not being implemented, they brought them under Harambe 1. And then they started implementing. For that reason, you see such a huge spike, because all they needed was to ensure that the machine is oiled and the implementation starts. Obviously, the 2 years pilot, they learned a lot, and the remaining period. So in that period, we were able to produce every year for 8 years, 9 years, 11,100, the highest since independence. And we found that the major impact came from the mass housing. In fact, in our study, we are also concluding that we do not see the reason why we should pack the mass housing. I know that in this house, there are people who are involved in the the presidential task forces, and they are working hard to come up with programs. But some of these old programs, like the mass housing, it has a bad name, but it's not bad. It achieved, in fact, it did very well. We owe it to President Pohamba because we pointed a finger that it's a failure. The research shows that mass housing was never a failure. It had its implementation challenges because NHE, who was the implementer, could not handle such a massive project alone. They were challenged. And that's why under Harambe 1, they were now able to identify other implementers. And then the thing picked up. Mass housing was well researched based on the 2009 white paper on housing that was translated into a housing policy. In fact, it's better just to take the mass housing, update it, because everything we want to do, read the mass housing, is there. I only find out after we've done the report, we made the recommendation, that's when I got hold, because when I went to see the government officials to understand, they gave me the document. I found that the mass housing team that time did a very good job. They were able to link the housing sector and the capital market. How do you bring pension fund? How do you reform in terms of institutions? How do you inform the laws? So it just needed implementers to do those things. So whoever really want to make an impact, yes, we can start new programs, but for me the best way is to upgrade on the mass housing. It did very well, and we congratulate President Pohamba for that work, although he's retired now. Oh, now it's coming. The other slide I wanted to share with you is I was talking about informal settlement increase. You'll find that in all regions, Omaheke has the highest number of people in informal settlement. I mean, I didn't expect that. Because Omaheke has the highest. How is that possible? That's where the rich farmers are. That's where everything is happening. Yeah? But then when we did other slides, we found that it had also the lowest number of new modern houses built on Maheke. So for that reason, people had to reside to go into informal settlement. Omaheke followed by Commerce, Kavango East is dominating in terms of informal settlement. Ochodonjupa, you find that most places in the north of Namibia, informal settlement is not very big. It's still big, but it ranges between 25% and 40%. Partly because people there live in their villages. They work in town, they stay in their villages, they come to work, they've got a mansion in their villages. Yeah? So we are saying these are statistics in terms of whatever program we come up with that we really need to look at. We really need to look at so that which region. We cannot, for example, now when we say we are going to build 50,000 houses in 5 years, which region are we targeting? Where is the problem? Yeah? Where is the problem? That need to be clearly defined. And that's what we did in the report also, to say that we need to define the problem. One of the major problems also we interrogated in the research is housing backlog. I know that there are some government officials here, and I think really the message needs to get across. You know, for the past more than 10 years, the backlog that we have been told is the official backlog is 300,000. I'm quite sure most of you heard about 300,000. 300,000. benchmark, we spend money. 300,000. Even us, when we started the research, we just took it like that. We believed that's the truth. But along the way, something was not adding up. Because initially I thought, okay, because I could see that the UN were also using it. But now, you cannot have a backlog figure without basing it on official statistics. It's illegal. All countries, to have a backlog, it must be based on accredited statistics. So now we started digging deeper. Some of our contacts at the UN said, no, we did not come up with that. We got it from government officials. Then we went, where did government get it? In fact, why I like the mass housing guys decided not to use the 300,000. In their report, they had said the backlog is 100,000. That was 2013. And then we calculated the backlog for 2011, because there was a census that was taken in 2011. Our calculation showed that the backlog that time was 110,000. So the mass housing guys somehow were informed, because our figures are close to each other. But the 300,000, and even this, up to this year, I have heard government officials saying 300,000 is our backlog. It's not. It's not. It has no basis. It has no statistical foundation. You know, someone just probably was powerful, said from today, you are going to use 300,000. And you are going to include it in this and this. Because some of the research we did, we found that, the former minister had said this about 300,000. This. No. Colleagues, we cannot run a country like that. You know, some of you who remember very well, some years ago, the ministry released the statistics that our unemployment was 51%. And it was simple methodological error. And it was presented to cabinet, approved, that's the official unemployment rate. For me, in fact, that time I was very also critical of government policy. So I said, well, this is good, it's fine. But then I was not at peace, and I decided to sit down and interrogate the data. And we found that no, the statistics was not, the unemployment was not 51%, it was around 34%. And the NSA took a new survey, they came exactly at that number. It doesn't mean we don't have unemployment, but you need to use international benchmark. Yeah? You know, it's like going to the doctor, you are saying my temperature is 50 while it's 35. They'll give you wrong medication. So like now, we are saying our benchmark is 300,000. That means we are prescribing wrong medicine to the housing sector, the economy. So very, very important that that 300,000 magic number, wherever it came from, need to be interrogated. And we calculated a new benchmark. Our benchmark is not even reaching 200, 300. Our new benchmark is 270,000 below. We were not happy with this because initially we wanted a higher number. Because we used 300,000 as a benchmark and build on it. No, it says 300,000 had no foundation. Now start from the foundation. That's why we went back to the 2011 survey. We calculated 110,000 backlog. Then we came to the 2023. It has grown to 270,000. In fact, we used two methodology. One gave us 217,000, which is a simple methodology. Then we use a modified requirement that looks at the replacement. So that one looks at the new houses that are needed, plus the quality of your housing, informal, if you have to upgrade them, how much of that? And we did those assumptions. That's where it came to 270,000. So we are saying the benchmark, the backlog is not 300,000, it's below 300,000. And we cannot use it to justify government budget. We cannot use it to justify government budget because it's wrong. It needs to change. Yeah? And we are ready through our report and collaboration with to share our methodology with the right people in government so that at least the 8th administration can be well informed, because at the moment they are putting things in order in terms of housing also, so that at least you start on a clean. It doesn't harm to say, let's use credible figures. So that is on the backlog. One of the major challenges of people not affording houses is affordability. We are in an affordable, there's a crisis. There is. And we are not a bank, but we are a lender, and we are seeing it. In a quarter, you'll have 10,000 applications. They will come with deed of sale. So the availability of land, property is a problem, but not major. So they will come with deed of sale. But when you do your assessments, majority of them do not qualify. Affordability, it's a crisis. That one, irrespective of what you are going to do, if you are not addressing that affordability challenge, we are going nowhere. And the segment that we service in our company is a public service members of the GIPF pension fund, which is government employees. They have got a very good scheme, a subsidy scheme. But despite that good housing scheme, they cannot qualify because they've got other debts. So affordability is really a crisis. Now, it has other way. You cannot address it by supplying more houses only. Yeah? You need to approach it from other angles. So there are so many issues within the housing sector that we cannot just say it's a matter of building more houses. So we calculated the 5 indicators. Can you imagine, out of the 5 indicators, we have got the income to house cost ratio, mortgage affordability ratio, house price to income ratio, house supply stress index, informal settlement pressure index, 5 affordability indicators. At least you will expect someone to get 40% even if they fail. Okay? So how much do you think Namibia scored? Is it 20%? Is it 60%? If you get the answer right, I've got a $10. 5%. In fact, Namibia fell 0% on all 5 indicators. Because you've got the international benchmark, then you calculate. Although we use the commerce region as an example, we calculated those ratios, then we compare. It's ratio number 1, income to housing cost, 0.78%, 0.78, severe affordability stress. So that means Namibians are in severe affordability stress they cannot afford. Because your income to housing cost, you are looking at the total cost as your denominator, your income on top. So what we did is that to look at commerce, and we took the average income, wage, and the total cost, including the mortgage, other payments, and you find that when you do that, most people are disqualified. And that's what the banks are also experiencing. There are a lot of people going there. And so Namibia fails on that score. Mortgage affordability ratio, again, we are above the benchmark. We fail until the end, all the ratios. So we did it this way so that now, from a policy point of view, you can say, for each indicator, what can be done? We are not claiming that this is 100% accurate. Yeah, So it needs to be interrogated. In fact, if it was in other countries, someone would take this research and they build on it and develop it further. Because for us, we could only go up to this level. But now there are experts who can now build data, and we'll see whether the NSA is something that they can do better. So Namibia fails on those 5 indicators. We also have got another indication. Recently you heard about calls to say that maybe Namibians must be allowed to pay off their mortgage 5 years. 20 years is too much. Now, I did not even expect the government to say that, because someone who said that is from government. It's not allowed. You cannot do such a thing. If today banks decide everyone 5 years, no more home loans. No one qualifies. And also, I hope some analysts have gone to those people in government to go and explain to them. When we started long time ago, globally, home loans were between 1 year and 5 years. I'm quite sure some of you heard about the Great Depression of 1930s. What contributed to that Great Depression was housing market, because all the mortgages were 5 years. So what the banks were doing, they'll give you a loan for 5 years. But because you cannot afford to repay, you have got a balloon payment at the end of 5 years. So you'll pay. After 5 years, they'll roll it all over. But then in the early 1930s, the economy started getting challenged. And banks said, no more rollover of loans. Pay your balloon payment. No one. And they started repossessing. There was a crisis in America. That's when now America established a commission to say, no, look at this. That's when they came up with the 15 to 30 year mortgage, eventually the 20 years. And they found that the 20 years was better. So basically you were moving from a problem to a solution. Yeah? So really government, and I saw that Bank of Namibia also sort of encouraged banks. In fact, at the moment, you are allowed, even us, our clients can pay off their loan within 3, 4, 5 years. It's not a problem. So that's not even an issue. It's just on affordability. So we have a slide here that was showing what happens if you have to take your loan in 5 years and 20 years. 20 years helps you with affordability, you qualify. So policymakers need to be careful when you make those statements, because someone might be enticed to start doing 5 years and having a balloon payment and repossess your house whenever they want to repossess. I think this is my almost last slide, then I'll give Laina to come and close. There's also an issue of alternative building. And I'm quite sure maybe there might be 1 or 2 people here involved in alternative housing. Is it alternative building technologies as a solution? So we did a study. You see, the challenge is the way the alternative building technology is being advertised. Someone will say, with alternative building, you can buy a house for 90,000. Someone last week was saying 129,000. But they don't tell you the components of a house. Where is that alternative? Is it going to be on the tree? It needs land. So we did a calculation here for a 2-bedroom where you use brick and mortars, conventional housing, and the alternative building, and then you see the difference. For a house of 800,000, how much savings are you making from shifting from a brick and mortars to alternative? Very little. Because the land will cost you 150,000. Whether it's alternative or not, you have to pay that. The services, bulk infrastructure, the same. 120,000, 120,000. So you're already above 200,000 plus 129,000, so you are now close to 400,000. But the guys are not telling you that. Now, where we see that maybe a saving will come is on the superstructures, the walls, the plaster, all those things, where we are saying probably you will save almost 30 to 40% there. But also it depends where they are coming from. Because it's a technology, you need to import them. So for a house of 800,000, if you use alternative building, it will decline to 730,000. You are making a saving of 30,000, 70,000. Now, unfortunately, the banks, I don't think they finance most of that. And also this technology, because we consulted some research, despite this advertisement, why is it not taking off all over the world? And we found the reasons. Kenya tried it. Number of East African countries tried it, but it's not picking up as someone was advertising. Yeah, partly it's because of also the materials that you're supposed to use. And there are different technologies, and the people have got patent to those technologies. Now, for a Namibian market so small like us, it becomes very difficult, expensive to set up a plant here. Now, imagine you setting up a plant for alternative building materials. I remember some years ago we were approached by a group of guys from Belgium and America who wanted to set up a plant here. But they were saying, we'll locate in the north, Oshakati area, because Namibia is a small market, so that we can supply Angola. So the bigger market was Angola, not Namibia. Yeah. So alternative, yes. Cost-benefit analysis, economies of scale. In terms of affordability, we find in our studies that it's not a solution. And unfortunately, most people also, psychologically, we want to be in a brick and mortar. You know, someone was telling me that this panel, you know, when a brick and mortar falls on you, it breaks down. This wall will just fall on you, it's concrete. So we are used to that. So finally, on my side, I just want to close on my side to say that please let's measure things in the housing market, especially the housing backlog. It's a policy variable. Everything hinges on that backlog. And unless we use the correct figure, we will not address housing the way it's supposed to address. So it's now my pleasure to hand over to Ms. Okay. Thank you very much for listening to me.
He didn't say who the miss was yet. But thank you so very much, Dr. Mwinga, for really giving us the framework or the foundation for this discussion tonight. I was keenly following what he was saying, and I must congratulate you, Doctor. Even with the malfunction of the PowerPoint, you were engaging. You had us, as the young people say, locked in. We were following the discussion and really, really grateful for the insights that you've shared. I think before I introduce the next speaker, one of the things you spoke, there's so many highlights from the presentation you gave, but for purposes of tonight's discussion, one thing was particularly striking for me. Doctor, you spoke about how, in your view and in your findings, mass housing as a concept was not wrong. And I think where you mentioned the error was in the implementation. I liked the comment you made, or rather what your research discovered, that in late President Geingobb's administration, what they got right was collaboration. And we see that that's what unlocked the numbers that Dr. Mwenga was referring to, 11,000 you mentioned. And I think that properly underscores why we're here tonight. You could go at it alone. You could start something alone. But we see at national level what the power of collaboration can do. The value of bringing different parties around the same table to figure out the same problem. And sometimes that's where African leadership fails, is that we need to do more of the consulting, more of the calling people with like-minded interests around the same table and figure out how to get moving. So I hope that that showed you very keenly why you're here tonight. It is not only to follow the presentation, but to start thinking through while you're listening how you can be a part of what we need to get right for the Namibian housing sector as a whole. So thank you very much, Doctor, for that. I'd like to introduce the CEO for First Capital, who will be taking over the presentation from now. And just a couple of remarks about her. Ms. Laina Amutenya is the Chief Executive Officer at First Capital Namibia. She has more than a decade of experience in housing finance and a background in law. She brings valuable expertise in housing affordability, finance, regulation, and of course, implementation. Her contribution to housing research and practical experience provides a very unique perspective on opportunities and challenges that are shaping Namibia's housing sector. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Ms. Laina Amutenya.
Ever since we started this study, so many things have changed. Ideally, I would not speak after my boss, but here I am speaking, so that's some of the changes that have happened. My name is Laina, as rightfully introduced, and I also just want to extend really my gratitude rather to everybody in this room for accepting our invite and for spending this not so cold afternoon with us this afternoon. Stacy had given Doctor, I think if it was on the affordability index, you'd have gotten 100% on how we always tease you to say, Doctor, you need to get your technology levels here, but today you proved that we don't always need technology, you can present without that. So I'm going to try my very best to present without the screen today. My presentation starts with theme 4, which speaks to why the current housing system is not working. Doctor have alluded to that, Stacey also has in her comments. But before I even get into it, there's something that is important that we need to recognize. And again, Doctor has highlighted it, and it's the fact that we have built a strong foundation in the housing sector as Namibia. So many times, it's very easy for us to point what didn't go wrong, what is not going well, what needs to happen, but we do not look back and say what actually went well. So I'm saying that where we are from 2011, starting from the survey of 2011 to 2023, we've gone through the numbers, we've gone through the data. We really patted our shoulder and say, as a nation, we should be proud. We have done significantly well. What is those things that we have done? We've established national housing policy frameworks, as already alluded to. And this is very important because then it crafts and it builds a structure on how we should implement these matters. That will, without overemphasizing, it will be the mass housing program. We have our Vision 2030, the white paper. You know, when we started doing the research and we went back to the 2009 white paper, we were like, the information is readily available. We have national development plans, and these are some of the things that our colleagues in the region, in the continent, they're still struggling with, but we have put that in place. We also have dedicated housing institutions and programs for housing. Yes, we have the ministries, then we have the National Housing Enterprise. We have built together the shack dwellers, the informal settlement upgrade program that is currently running, the local authorities. I think when we speak to them, it's all about housing, it's about delivery. And utility providers, private developers, the private sectors, we have all these dedicated institutions. And again, we are doing well. We have comprehensive planning and land development legislation. Remember, I went to a certain African country. One of my friends, we went to their place. We couldn't tell where the road is. In fact, when we went to the kitchen and I went outside for the door, I opened the door into somebody else's house. And I got started, I'm like, what is happening? Why don't you have a wall fence? Like, I'm not sure where my border and my neighbor's border actually end. But then here, we're saying that we have comprehensive planning and land development legislation. 2-3 years ago, I think the Africa Union Housing Finance had their conference here in Namibia. I was speaking to a guy from Senegal, and he was saying, I cannot believe that you guys cannot build in town until a land is actually serviced. He said, for us, you build and you deal with the services later. And that really rang an alarm to me to say, we are doing well. So we have legislations that speak to this. And again, lastly, it's our secure property rights. Yes, there's still room. There's so much that we can do. But the fact that we have an effectively running deeds registry, you know, we have a very risk and compliant-based legal team. And when we were busy working or putting together the pension back home loan scheme and how it would run, they were very strict on what needs to happen and the likes. But I was very comfortable to know that our systems have that layer of assurance. Again, some that have title deeds in the Namibian market, you are not scared that that property is not yours. You are assured that if it's registered the deeds of office, I do actually have ownership to that. That again, it's something that we are doing very well as a nation. The Ministry of Urban is busy running with a flexible land tenure, and I know they do have engagements on how they can enforce that. But again, it's also just good to know that as a country, we are not just looking at the traditional mortgages, we are also coming back to say, where is the land, who needs access, and how can we come in? So with that, remember my theme 4 is, why is the current housing system not working? But then if I end here, we'll go home and say, it actually is working. But then the thing is that we do really have a good foundation. We have a very good starting point. I know most of us here are industry players in the housing sector, and I really just want to encourage us to say that it is not that bad. It is not that bad. There's a lot, there's so much that has already been done. We just need to improve and work on that. So then that takes me to my next part of my presentation that then speaks to what exactly is happening. And with the research, what we then found is that the challenge is actually a systems problem, and not a lack of policy, not a lack of government commitment, it's not a lack of legislations and land issues, and the constructions of properties actually, oh, thank you. Technology just caught up with me. So then it's, the challenge that we then have is a system problem. And the policy then identifies 5 interconnected structural weaknesses that constrains our housing delivery. Number 1 is fragmented institutions and weak coordination. Yes, we have the developers, we have the financiers, we have the investors, we have the local authority, we have government, but everybody is going a different direction. We are all trying to tackle the same problem, but with different methodologies that is not working. So what is needed here is for us then to coordinate, to collaborate, to come together and align to ensure that our mandates, our budgets, our implementation capacities, our timelines are actually focused on one goal. Secondly, is outdated and fragmented legislative framework. I know we've been doing very well as a country. We just finished with FEMA on the financial, in the financial industry. But again, also if we look at our acts when it comes to land, they are really outdated. Yes, still functional, but then they have overlooked so much have transpired to our country that we need to ensure that these laws accommodate that. And that again is a system issue. If resolved, then helps us with the housing challenge that we are currently facing. We also have limited and poorly integrated housing finance. And that is really one key thing that came out from the report. And it's saying most of the time when we look at housing and we look at affordability, we think of the borrower, we think of the end user. But the housing financing sector is actually broad, is over and above just the borrower. So in our report, we have two reforms that we are calling on the housing finance. Yes, one directly to the affordability aspect of it, but the second one is on the value chain in the housing sector. We have developers that have been allocated land. I'm informed now that most local authorities actually recalling back the land. And why? One, they don't have access to funding to develop the land. If they had secured a credit note or they have secured a term sheet, by the time the whole process of approvals and the likes happen, the project is no longer feasible, and then it becomes a white elephant. Again, we have, this is now on housing finance, we have the borrowers, yes, we have the developers, we have investors that are ready to invest in the housing sector of Namibia, but there's a number of legislations that just needs to be put right, that just needs to speak to the times and unlock such investments. This we can agree that we have a very slow land servicing and infrastructure delivery. To the conveyancers, they have done well. The turnaround time has changed, it has really reduced. However, the issue is the servicing, the infrastructure, the delivery of that. And we will well understand because previously it was on local authorities and they would do, but then now it's on developers and all this, and the process is just so tedious that to actually get to not even laying the brick, but what would be the word, to break the ground. By the time you reach, you've already spent so much money. And again, the project either becomes not feasible or the pricing goes high, and we then blame and say property prices are rising. But they are not just rising from nowhere, magically, the doctor said magically just rising. There are other factors that need to be corrected so that that end result also benefits this challenge that we are currently facing. We also, the study, one of the other very interesting, and it excited me, what we saw in the studies that we have a housing market that excludes large segments of households. Currently, when we speak about housing, when we speak about housing financing, housing delivery, whatever the case may be, we all go in the traditional route. It should be a mortgaged property. And again, we have so many projects, so many programs that are being carried out to address the national housing backlog. But then this is all mostly channeled to mortgage financing. But does everybody really need a mortgage? Probably not. Can everybody afford a mortgage? The affordability told us that it cannot. So what are we doing? We are doing a one size fit all, which again is causing a challenge to our system. We have about 7 sectors that we're looking at as housing solutions in the report to say that yes, there's those that can afford the conventional mortgage. And then yes, there's still laws that also need to be adjusted to make that easier and more affordable and accessible to them. However, we also then have the ultra low who probably would need social housing. And I guess that's one of the gaps that we also identified to say, yes, we have policies on mass housing. However, on the social housing element, we do not have a policy to guide us and to unlock the potential and to unlock the need, to actually meet the need that is in that sector. We also then recommend another rent to own. Yes, it has been spoken, but then the pace of which it's going also indicates that there's a lack of understanding, a lack of commitment, probably even frameworks on how one can operate. We have engaged some of our neighboring country investors and some international investors, and they were very keen on rent to own. But then one of the things that they raise is like, but you do not have a national framework on how this would operate. It's based on your idea, it's based on what the other countries and benchmarkings and the likes, and probably you would know that even with my boss, then he would refuse and say, what are you benchmarking this to? So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We have the informal settlement, yes. Not everybody will really move into the formal settlement, but we can still do upgrades in that. And that there's a number of, like I've said, a number of housing solutions that we have looked at. And the message really is just to say that yes, there's a housing need, but then we cannot meet it with the same solution. So we need to segment, we need to target, we need to plan, we need to be specific to say, who is this product for? Where are we taking this product? So that is really important. You know, I remember we were going, a few months ago, we were integrating one financing solution that we were trying to look at, and then in the room there was a very, I would say, ripe Gen Z, you know, and they shoot down everything we were saying, like, no, I wouldn't want to do that. I'm a young professional, that doesn't appeal to me. And from our end, we were saying, no, but at least you have a roof over your head. It's like, I don't want a roof. I need a place that my soft life should show. So the need differs now. A lot has changed. Again, we cannot do a one-size-fits-all. Then in our theme 5, we were then looking at rethinking the housing delivery and the finance. So the report is saying it's two things. It's not just delivery. It's not just constructing properties and putting units out there, but also the financing of it, the accessibility of such products. So then we had to go back and rethink and say, how do we then go about that? Obviously, the first one is a diversified housing market. We have a chapter that speaks to that, to say we need to diversify the housing market, move away to that one, from that one way of thinking and diversify. We also looked at the national housing delivery system to say, at the national level, we need to have a system. Currently, everybody is operating in silos. We can only say, yes, we are doing well when we look at the numbers, but we don't fully understand the struggle that brought that entity, that brought that individual, that brought that institution to the numbers that they are developing. And you'd find that the solutions are in each one of these entities, but what is missing there is that unification. The other one I've spoken about, the national housing architecture, very important, both from the end user, from the industry players, from the investors, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done there. So towards when we look at a new housing system, if I should say, the report then has about 8 recommendations on how we can tackle this. The first one is evidence-based housing plan. And again, that is what was just alluded to say that when we speak about a housing need, when we speak about a backlog, we need evidence. The evidence is our unlocking key to ensure that whatever solutions that we are putting out there would actually yield results. So we are saying that we need an evidence housing plan. Secondly is a national housing framework, which I have spoken to. Long term, you know, we have said the mass housing had until vision 2030, and it's about to come to an end. So what is going to happen after that? What are we looking at? Yes, we can do segmented activities, but holistically, what is a policy? What is a direction? What are we looking at as a nation? Institutional reform, very important. We did also acknowledge some of the institutions. NHE did very well. We looked at the shock dollars, the build together, but we are saying that they need to be a reform. The challenge then was the housing stock. The challenge now is affordability. The challenge now is the market players. The industry have changed, so there needs to be a reform there. Again, legislative and regulatory reform, that also is very keen. We have identified a number of legislations there, but the good thing is that we are not starting from scratch. We are just enhancing, we are aligning. Number 5 is the land and infrastructure finance. This really is also very, very, very important to have that National Housing Infrastructure Fund. And this is mainly because, yes, we have land, we have massive land, we have local authorities with their well-written regulations and acts and planning processes and the like, but they don't have the capacity to actually then service this land. Yes, they go to lenders to try and obtain funding. Then again, funding comes at a cost. I would also, our requirements, I mean, we've been informed that again, most of them now, they are being put under pressure to produce their audited financial statements, because that also becomes a key requirement. But then there is a need to say, let's look away from the lenders, let's again look away from the local authorities. Because again, if we go back to affordability, local authorities also don't have funding. They receive limited funding, but also the borrowers themselves are not able to pay rates and taxes. For in the past, very recent, if I should say, we have read articles on local authorities trying to close off, is it water supply, electricity supply, because people are just not paying. So the affordability has a whole ripple effect on on everyone, and that's why we are saying, let's rethink and probably look at a national housing infrastructure fund. The number 6 is the housing finance reform. This again I've spoken to say that we need to mobilize long-term investment for housing delivery, in as much as we are looking at how can we make the borrower or the end user access financing to actually purchase such a property. Last but not, number 7 is a diversified housing delivery again, which I've spoken to say we have about 7 housing solutions there. And again, it will also just do well that when we look at these solutions, we also look at where will this work. I know when we're discussing on the alternative housing, we're saying alternative housing, probably at the face value, ideally probably will work in the major towns and major cities. But then again, people that are in the major towns and major cities would not want to go for affordable housing. And then if you take it to if you take it to the other towns, you'd find that where would I then pay land and put up this structure? I might as well just get a formal conventional housing. So when we look at the situation, when we look at the housing solutions that we have, and we look at the targeted market that we are looking at, it helps us join so many things together, and then we don't waste time, we don't waste resources, we don't waste effort, and we actually do tackle the backlog. Lastly, very key, and again, I think Doctor was very conservative in talking about the challenge of the study report. This report, actually, the housing study rather, they started working on it from 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And the mark was, no, by March we should release, and the years kept going. Some of our former colleagues that work on this report, I'm seeing them in the room, they've left. When they got the invite, they're like, oh, that was still on the table. And really what made that very challenging for us to do was because of the segmented data. And again, there was just no data at all. What you get, yes, there will be headlines, there will be comments and remarks on housing and whatever the case may be, but the actual data is not there. So our 8th recommendation is for us to establish a national housing monitoring, evaluation, and data management system. We are now in the world, it's no longer ICT, in fact it's AI. There's so much that we can do. South Africa is no longer using valuers. I'm sorry if there are any valuers here. They have their own, all this is integrated in one system. So again, we are saying that yes, now we have a backlog, it's housing, but then if we don't have the data, if we can't manage it, if we can't monitor it, 5 years down the line, we will be again circling around the numbers that probably might not be informed. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Like Dr. have said, the report is over 200 pages. We have tried to put as much as we could in the chapters. It has reduced. I think initially it was about 300 to 400, but then we said let's reduce. We will do follow-up write-ups on certain chapters, especially the ones that can really be easily implemented and help the government priority and the national priority on housing delivery. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Amutenya, for that very informative. I wouldn't be wrong if I closed this laptop, right? Because it's not serving its purpose at the moment. But thank you so very much for talking us through the challenges, but layered by what has gone well, and really bringing us to a point of understanding what we need to do to get it completely right. You mentioned so many key things, but I chose to take one point which I think underpins all of your messaging tonight. And I think it comes down to this: innovation in housing solutions. We need to be innovative, be it in terms of the legal landscape, innovative in the kinds of solutions we implement, innovative in the processes, the systems, the data management system. All of it, I think, anchors on the desperate need for us to be a little bit more innovative in terms of the solutions that we engage for whatever we're trying to fix. I'm very happy to note that in the room there are law reformers who are listening to this conversation, because there was quite a number of points mentioning the fact that we've done fairly well in terms of having a solid framework, and I do attest to the fact that if you own a title deed to something, 9 times out of 10 you're the only one that owns that property. In other countries, not the case. You literally need to go and be checking ever so often, am I still the only one here on this X, Y, and Z plot? Sometimes you get surprised, there's 6 of you claiming ownership to the same thing, or something was changed without your knowledge and you are moving around thinking, at least I have a property. Oh no, sweetheart, something has happened. So we're grateful for how far current legislation has brought us, but obviously there's need to rethink the kind that we need to be able to not only sort out the backlog, but create some form of certainty in this area of housing. I think we've come to the best part of tonight, question and answer. I think they did fantastic without the tech, which somewhat was a blessing because you were forced to listen. I always find it challenging if there's a presentation in the back. Am I looking at you? Am I listening? So this one, you were forced to listen and engage. And I think that they did a wonderful job just giving us the highlight of what the report presents. This is your time to shine. You are very welcome to ask questions, make reflections, make recommendations. The report will officially be available by next week on the First Capital website. It is www.firstcapitalnam.com. And I appreciate, Doctor, your generosity in taking the time to do this report. I felt the entrepreneur in you giving a nod to some of the entrepreneurs in the room and said if they read it carefully, you might just unlock a business in that report. So I'm looking forward to sitting down with it. It will be ready from next week, Monday, www.firstcapitalnam.com. I strongly advise you make it part of your weekend reading. Do we have any questions, comments, reflections? Please don't worry, we're not keeping you this long for nothing. The refreshments weren't only to say hello, we have more to say goodbye. So you will be very welcome to have those once we're done. And as I mentioned, say hello to someone, introduce yourself, network, make sure you know someone that you didn't come here knowing this evening. Do we have any questions, comments, reflections? Yes, sir. May I please ask for a mic to go around the room? Please introduce yourself and ask the question. I will ask for another mic to just go down to Dr. and Miss Amutenya, as they will be responding to the questions. If I attempt to do any such thing, you will not believe I have been to school. Another mic here, please.
Can I?
Yes, you may. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Martin Amupala. I'm with GIZ Namibia.
Oh, are you Dr. Mwinga's namesake?
Yes.
Look
yes,
at that.
My Mbushe. I just have a question on the economy. Where we work, we realize that majority of the people earn just below 3,000. And this is across a lot of towns. And I was wondering if, in your findings, one can think of how solving housing can also solve the economic situation more systematically. Because at the moment, I think it's always, you can create construction jobs, but is there a way to link livelihood opportunities to solving the housing question?
I love that question. Doctor, are you happy to take that?
That's a difficult question. So someone earning 3,000 and how the housing sector can bail them out from that their unemployment situation or their poverty. Okay. What Lina, in fact, is, unfortunately, she couldn't show that. We are proposing 7 solutions. Out of those solutions, you find there are quite a number of housing programs that targets the lowest, like the group that you are talking. And that's the one that will really uplift a lot of these people from that poverty. There's a program for informal sector people. There's a microfinance. So there are a number of programs that are there that we believe that are targeting. So what we did also is to look at segments and needs within the informal sector. Who are they? What are their needs? What is their income brackets? What type of housing will bring them out? And what type of structures need to be put in place so that they can afford. We believe housing is there's a chapter on housing as an economic asset. And we want to use that so that these people with low income will be able to have access to assets. You know, some years ago, I was very impressed some years ago when we were invited to State House. That time there was argument that we should give more loans to people in the rural areas. The current Minister of Defense, he was a Secretary to Cabinet, said something that was interested. Okay, look, I don't have a problem in us giving loans to people in the villages, but we need to use housing as an asset that builds wealth. Now, in your village, you put a small mansion. Who will buy it from? Is it going to build equity? Now, within these village councils, we have done programs where we went in partnership with village councils, targeting people who are earning 3,000, 5,000 liner, yeah? And quite a lot of them qualified because the village councils then provide the land at a very low price. And then they were able, so we have got hundreds and hundreds of people within that range group who qualified. So yes, within our report, there are programs that we believe will help uplift these people out of poverty.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mwenga. Any other reflections, questions from the room? Yes, ma'am. Please introduce yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Mwenga, Ms. Amutenya, distinguished guests and members of the public. My name is Linekela Itembu. I am a first-year Bachelor of Economics student at the University of Namibia. My question today is that what tips or advice does the doctor have for the youth that are looking to build their wealth through investment properties and housing in the future? What can we do today to set ourselves up for a better future? Thank you.
Wonderful question. They are the youth. A friend, Ms. Mutindi, and I were talking earlier about how these ones of these days know what they want and what they are looking for. Very evident in the young lady who asked a very pertinent question. Doctor, you may go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question. In fact, if you look at First Capital, which is a asset finance company, most of the staff that we have that are now very rich, including Julia here. Yeah, we also came from there as just a student, including the CEO here. She joined us as an intern. Today she owns more than how many properties?
Karibib.
Yeah, just to answer your question, property is one of, I'll be biased because it's my favorite asset class. Can you imagine, I used to work for big fund management companies where we invest in offshore and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, but my heart was in property till I was given the opportunity to set up a fund that invests in that. So as young people now, what I can tell you, Okay? If you are really interested in the property market, housing market, we are just beginning this sector. We are at an early stage. So research like the one we did now is the first step. If you are really serious, Mr. Itembu, next month when we meet, I want to hear how much you have learned from that report. Yeah? And then you tell me that I think on this product, I want to structure a product this. Then, so there are a number of people, I'm quite sure, if I look around, I might see them, that we have helped set up funds, and some pension fund invest in their fund, and they are managing those funds. Yeah, even if you don't run a small fund, you direct property ownership in many ways. I've put a number of a group of young people who came together buying property. So the report says property is a very good economic asset, but you need to manage it actively. You need to know where to buy, but it is in those neglected areas. Okay, you need to become a value investor. Okay, a value investor who look at the cycle and say, this thing is trading at a big discount. And there are those properties that are there. So that's one lesson I can give you, to that go into those depressed market. A property that's supposed to be selling for 400,000 will be selling for 150. But within 5 years, they will have increased by more than 100%. Okay? Thank you.
There's your tip number 1, but loaded with other benefits. Thank you very much. Sir, there's one question here, and then the young man towards the back. Go ahead.
Kewavali Neshila from Ulwazi, Africa. I just wanted to tell Lina that we do have an AI database now in Namibia, but we are just waiting for the payment gateway for you to be able to access data, make valuations,
Wow.
environmental impact assessments,
Wow.
and also rezoning subdivisions. So it's quite a whole range of information, but yeah, we have started.
Amazing. Thank you very much. The industry is awake. That is something definitely worth applaud. Thank you so much for sharing that. The name of your company again, sir? Ulwazi Africa. There you go. Sir, go ahead.
Good day, everyone. My name is Etuna Isak, and I'm a third-year Bachelor of Economics student at the University of Namibia. My question to Dr. Mwinga is that, and it speaks to affordability, does the report in any way address how the manufacturing sector or industrialization at large could help bridge that gap between affordability and someone being able to afford the house? Because a lot of the prices of our houses being up are mostly down to the fact that we import most of our building materials from outside, and those import costs are also channeled into the cost of the property that's being built. But if we take an example of recently this year, Etunda produced the country's first batch of bananas that were sold in retail, and those bananas were way cheaper than the ones that we're importing outside. So that also speaks to the fact that if we can maybe try and industrialize a bit quicker, because it's been 36 years, I mean, like, we should be able to figure things out a bit quicker. Then if we can produce our own building materials, it would help in the fight against affordability, because once you are producing locally and you are using locally produced materials in order to build, then the price of housing will fall down to a certain degree.
Fair question. Doctor?
Thank you. In fact, the report covers all those areas. But just to give you an example, we are producing a lot of material for housing. If you look at the component of housing, starting from the foundation, the cement we produce here, we have got a factory that produces cement. We don't import cement. Sand, we don't import cement. I mean, sand. Stones, I think we are making them ourselves. You know, you need those stones. And then we make brick-making factories. Here in Namibia, we are specialists. Anyone, you can go and set up a brick-making plant. yeah, and we'll buy from you. Because for us, even the big blocks, the bigger one, we finance. Yeah? So if you look at the house itself, almost 60% of the materials are produced here. Now, when it comes to even roofing, because now some people are producing the aluminum, the ink, it's only few items that we are importing. Maybe electrical cables and all those things.
Finishes.
Eh? Yeah. Yeah. So basically, most of the thing we are producing, if you are asking about the current houses, most of that, that's why the construction sector, the housing sector employs a lot of people because when we spend money in that sector, the brick makers, those who are selling sand, stones, they'll be in business. So if you look at our report also, we have got 5 indicators. 3 of them are talking about demand side in terms of addressing affordability. We found that affordability in Namibia is more on the demand side, on the income side. That's where the pressure is. Yes, the supply side also is an issue because if there's delayed supply, then prices will be increasing. But we find that the dominant factor is on the demand side. Properties will be there, but people are getting good incomes, but because of other obligations, they cannot afford to buy. In fact, Namibia is highly indebted. Not government, probably government is better. As individuals, we are highly, highly indebted, and that's the thing that blocks us from participating in housing. So, yes, to answer your question, affordability is not only because we are importing materials, it's because our income maybe is not rising according to the way it's supposed, but for a long time, our salary was adjusting quite on the positive side. Yeah, so that's what I can answer on that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I will allow a question from you, ma'am. And right at the back, do we have anyone on this side of the room, perhaps? Yes, sir. So I would take 3 questions and maybe allow Grace for 1 more. Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is not a question, it's just to note appreciation. My name is Enshile Ngudwa. I practice law, property law, as a conveyancer, and I've also been assisting on the Presidential Task Force on Housing, Land and Sanitation. And Doc and Lina, I just want to give you a big applause for the work that have been done into the entire First Capital team. This is not an easy job, and it will ask you to have a passion for what you are doing. And I can see that, I can see your passion in this. I can see your passion for the nation to create housing and deliver whatever you need to deliver to the children of Namibia. And if I look at the solutions that you have recommended, I can tell you that they are mostly aligned with the findings that we've done on the Presidential Task Force. And I would really recommend you that you take it a step further and also reach out to the Presidential Task Force in terms of all this. And mostly, affordability is one of the issues that we have identified. And also not to exclude the youth, the voice of the youth. And if you said that the youth, what we might think is a solution for the youth, is not
What they want.
what they want. So it is very, very important to include the youth in the room when we are discussing all this, because especially on the structures that we are saying and all that. So for me, the voice of the youth is very, very important. And the other thing is the impediments, the laws. And I had a chat with Dr. Earlier on, and I said that we did identify about 55 laws. They came, we brought them down to 44 that have got, which are impediments on the delivery of housing, and all these things that are, and the laws are scattered These are in environmental, these ones are at urban, these ones are here, they are not integrated. And what do we do in terms of the national integration that as a solution that First Capital have recommended? So there are many things in housing and land issues. The youth is saying, give us land, even if the land is not serviced. But the local authorities are saying, no, we cannot give you land which is not serviced. So can I build, the banks are saying, we cannot give you financing if you don't have a service land. So, and then the local authorities are saying that there's no money to service land. So then what are the solutions? So these are the things that we need to get in the room. And I was flying from Eros Airport to Ondangwa because, for a funeral. It was last minute. And I was actually shocked to see the number of informal settlement. It was so shocking, it's so painful. And if we don't find solution to this, and what like Doctor have started on his own with First Capital to say, these are the issues that we are having. We need to address these issues. And sometimes we want to address these issues looking at what am I going to pocket out of this deal of construction, what am I going to, but as I say, the youth is the future of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, ma'am. Thank you for that point of just underscoring why this meeting tonight is important, but also as a note of gratitude to First Capital, because this truly is selfless work. They didn't have to, but they have, and thank you for acknowledging them. Thank you for coming. I think it's very equally important and very telling of the fact that this is a national issue. You are in the legal profession and you're very much a part and parcel of what this solution could look like. So thank you for your time. Where is the mic? Okay, sir at the back, and then we have the lady, Miss Mutindi, over here, and then I'll allow two more unless this high table tells me otherwise. Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Albert Matangela. Thank you very much, Dr. Mwinga and the CEO for the beautiful presentations. I just want to zero in on one figure, the 50% urban-rural ratio. I think that one fits well with one of the reforms that were mentioned, especially on housing. I think probably what we can zero on as part of the recommendations is that maybe we should encourage financing of housing in the rural areas. But because I mean, now when you drive in Windhoek, especially in the morning, the congestion is terrible. So probably zeroing in on that one can reduce that migration as well. Just making sure that people that are probably close to retirement that can finance their houses in rural areas can be able to finance through the pension scheme of GIPF that was mentioned. I think that's my only contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that practical suggestion. I will leave it to the masterminds to think through, unless, Doctor, you'd like to comment on it.
It's good that you mentioned about building in the village. And the CEO mentioned that we just introduced another product on the pension-backed home loan. And one of the challenges that this whole thing is facing is, again, the outdated laws. So initially we thought it would just fly. But now you have a piece of land in the village. The law does not recognize. You thought that was your land, but you cannot build a structure. So you need a long process. I think, Lina, I want you to elaborate on that one. That's why. Just explain how.
Okay. All right. Yes. On rural, communal areas, yes, unproclaimed areas, like what Dr. rightfully said, is that with a pension-backed unlocks an opportunity for GIPF members and members of pension funds that their rules allow for pension-backed loans to then get financing in the villages. However, the law currently is that the person building on such a piece of land should have a paper to should have a right of use to that. Now, what we have seen from January rather, when we started with the scheme, is that the understanding at the grassroots is that once I have the paper from the traditional authority and I pay the $75 every year, then I can confirm that I actually do have the right of use to that land. However, the requirements are that you have to go through the full process with the Ministry of Lands Agriculture to ensure that that right of use is actually registered under your name and also in the system. So what have happened, we have young people that are working in nearby towns, commuting from their parents' villages. They have access to subsidy, can actually access the pension back home loan, but we cannot finance them because they don't have title to that or right of use to that land. So that is one of the challenges that is there. But I am happy to say that we are busy engaging with the ministry through our investor, the GIPF, and we hope that that can be accelerated. But there is the product again is there, but then again it goes back to what has been rightfully been said, the impediments to some of these processes.
Wow. Thank you. That's very enlightening, but also concerning. Ms. Mutindi?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mutindi Jacobs. I'm the Deputy Chief at the Directorate Law Reform and Development Commission. I just want to start by congratulating Madam CEO and Doctor on finalizing this report. I can attest to the fact that it's very difficult to find data in Namibia. As a Law Reform Commission, we struggle with this, but I congratulate you because instead of making excuses, you made progress, and now we've got this report that we can use in the lawmaking process. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Law Reform and Development Commission. It's a statutory institution that exists under the Ministry of Justice. And in the spirit of collaboration that we spoke about, my learned colleague here mentioned that you've got about 40 laws that need to be consolidated or reviewed with a view to innovate new solutions. Sorry? Should I speak louder? Sorry. Okay, I've lost my train of thought now.
Collaboration on the 40
Okay, in the spirit of collaboration, I just wanted to highlight the fact that the Law Reform and Development Commission can be a partner in this process. We can assist you with doing a legislative review to understand where our laws are and to then do consultations, nationwide consultations, to make sure that we get inputs from all targeted stakeholders as well as broad-based consultations. So we've got a section in our law that allows us to do that. Usually we'll have a work program that the Minister of Justice will endorse, but other institutions, any office, ministry, or agency within Namibia is enabled by Section 7 of our Act to approach the LRDC with a project proposal. So our doors are open. We'd love to collaborate, and just to congratulate you once again, we're really excited to be part of this process with you, and you can contact our office when you're ready. Thank you.
Wonderful. Exactly what I was hoping for tonight. To make sure that we leave this room with some concrete ideas of what the next step looks like. Thank you, Ms. Mutindi, for highlighting the services of the LRDC. Yes, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simpson Usiku, second-year chartered accounting student at the University of Namibia. I just wanted to ask a question regarding the overall housing market and the whole concept of capital appreciation. So we do know that buying a house, especially with a bank and getting a home mortgage loan, is expensive, right? But by the time I want to dispose of that particular house and what's not, does it guarantee me that I'm going to make a profit by the time I pay off the loan? Because we've seen circumstances where you can actually buy a house worth 2.5 million, and by the first 10 years, you're actually just paying off interest. And by the time you are done paying off the whole mortgage loan, you would have probably paid 3.5 million or above that. So is the housing market sufficiently regulated to make sure that property owners, by the time they dispose of their assets, they will actually make something more than what it actually costed them?
Wonderful question. Thank you.
Good question. Property, just like any other asset class, if you buy shares, you need first to do your evaluation. If you invest in a bond, you need to do your evaluation and see whether, I mentioned earlier that you need to become a value investor. You know, so I think you are a student. Who was
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, you need to become a value investor. You know, in investment, you've got gross investor, value investor, contrarian investor. Okay? So if you want to make money in property, don't say that because government says that they don't want people to make money in property. You must just buy property to stay in. But property is an asset class where people can invest. That's why institutional investors like a pension fund, insurance companies, are now investing in property because it appreciates in value. So even the property, the portfolio that we manage, we have seen it appreciating. So most people who came, in fact, that's why the banks will, even as I think we have that clause, you are not allowed to sell within the first 2-3 years. Yeah. Because sometimes you find someone buys now, within a year, the property has appreciated by 30% or 40%, and then they want to sell, and then that's like becoming more speculative. So the point I'm making is that there is capital appreciation in a housing market, but you need to do your study very carefully. You need to understand where the cycle is going. Yeah. For example, we just came up from a market that was depressed, and we started seeing property increasing. So it goes through cycles. So you just need to know where to buy. You will not make a mistake. I always say that property is a good asset class for poor people. Okay? What I mean by poor people,
Please clarify.
if you come from a background where maybe you are the first one from that family to make it, okay? So you are not going to inherit much. Property is the only asset class where you can buy without money, your own money, especially in Namibia. Yeah? If you've got a job, you've got an income, you go to a bank, they will assess your affordability. You buy your first bond, your first property. After some times, if you can go and stay in a Kambashu and put that one on rent, it start giving you income. You can buy a second bond, second house. By the time you realize you build a portfolio of properties. So it's a good investment. I've got personal experience of that. I've seen it working. So when you graduate, when you finish your first job, make sure that you don't stay long before you buy property. Even if you are still staying with your parents, buy the property, put it on rent, while you are squatting with your brother or your parents. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you for those words of wisdom, Dr. Mwinga. Any other questions, reflections in the room? Yes, sir? And ma'am. Martin, you had a question? A reflection? Not you, doctor. There are other Martins in the room.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Shilongo. I'm the Executive for Infrastructure Development at NHE, National Housing Enterprise. I would also like to extend my gratitude and congratulations to the First Capital for a job well done. We need a lot of information on housing. Housing is a sensitive issue because it doesn't matter what is your income class. You must go and sleep somewhere that evening. And I'm happy to, from an NHE perspective, I'm also happy to acknowledge that the report was based on facts and it wasn't impartial or trying to, or somehow contaminated. Why I say this is because for the report to single out the mass housing as a success, while in the nation it was sort of seen as it's not. I just want to say why actually the facts speak to that. It's because the program spoke to most of the solutions that are given in the study. The program saw that land must be availed. That's one. The issue we're having currently, there is lack of land availability. due to the processes, again, that we're saying, the stages you have to go through, the prices and so on. Now, for mass housing, land was availed, and in mass, 2,000, local authorities were giving 2,000, 5,000, a lot of huge quantities. Then secondly, the land, the cost was not passed to the end user. So the government took money and serviced the land. Now, I'm a big advocate to say, for affordable housing, only through subsidy can you achieve it. Because unfortunately, that's why that zero index, it's a true factor. You can't afford. Now, because of that, the taxpayers' money, it's almost like the rich substitute the poor. So in other words, the government gets funding through the tax program and invests it. And then the moment that land servicing is not passed to the end user, the house becomes affordable. The other factor is that there was also, the subsidy went further, because a house that was constructed for, let's say, 250,000 was only sold to the end user for 90,000. You see that? So it was highly subsidized. And mass housing housed a lot of people, of course, and I really agree to say it was a huge program. And it obviously was too huge, but it is a good program. The other issues that I also want to point out is just to say that within this space where we are, we really need to look at the land issue in terms of availing land for service land for housing. Without land, we can't speak on this issue, because the issue is land. Most, even in the continent, there are programs that are just looking at giving people serviced land. Why in the rural areas are people able to build houses with bricks or structures? Is because they are able to put up a permanent structure. Now, in the informal areas, the people are not allowed to build permanent structures because the area is not formalized. But to tell you the truth, I think Namibia is one of the hardworking nations that if you give a person a service land, that person can take 5 years, but they will build that house. So that is really one of the issues we need to address. There was one of the solutions, maybe, as we are also saying we have policy makers in the room, is we need to look at the focus on just service land. In fact, NHE, when it was established, it was just to build top structures. Local authorities were supposed to give the land, serviced, and then we put top structures. Today, NHE has to service the land, put the top structure, then in the end, the cost is out of the affordability bracket. So it's really a fight, it's a challenge, but we need to look at the real issues, and we need to address them. Today I attended a conference on flexible land tenure. So the government is really doing something. The Ministry of Lands, they are busy formalizing tenure or land hold titles. And this also just speaks to the gentleman who asked about the rural areas. NHE actually has, or let me say, we are allowed to build in village council or village areas or villages, just as First Capital I highlighted. But the issue is the title. Now, the title is coming. So that is one. So we believe that we will be able to finance. Also, the pension back was the issue, because pensioners are saying, okay, now we have money in the pension. I'm going back to the village. The money is just sitting there. So how do I get that into a house? So that is also already a solution that's now on the table. So I just really wanted to appreciate the study and to just really say the study is spot on. Even the 270 that's reported, it's close to the 300,000 backlog. So we are really moving in the right direction. And I think we need to start thinking positive. I like the fact that the CEO highlighted to say, we are really doing well. Colleagues, I tell you, we are doing well. When I went to Kenya, the people were shocked that we passed title just when your loan is approved. They wait for 20 years or 25. That's when you get title. Like, it was unheard of. So we really have very good structures. And I also have to say there is a good blend between private and government. There is not really a huge fight. In fact, we are not competing. We are complementing each other. And that's just what I also want to applaud. Just wanted to really put that out and to say thank you. We're looking forward to the research and especially the solutions. I'm sure in the study you go deeper and open up in terms of how can those be enacted. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, sir, for those comments. Thank you for giving us context. Thank you for giving us insight. I think very useful that we have a voice from NHE, and again, really to applaud the work done by First Capital in this report. Thank you for confirming the validity thereof. And again, in the spirit of collaboration, very happy to note that you are happy to be part of what a solution could look like for the Namibian housing sector. Ladies and gentlemen, we're pressed for time, but as the gracious host that I am, I will allow one more person. There we go. Oh, she's giving me eyes, and she's a youth. Tomorrow they'll say that moderator doesn't like the youth. So that young lady over there, and you will close. Thank you. Sorry, we have to close. Okay, please keep it short and sweet.
Okay, my name is Nilonga Amukwiyu. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Shilongo mentioned about the supply of serviced land, because that's really where the issue is of housing is. Many times you find people, even, public servants, not just, in executive, people in executive, in government, blaming the banks and so forth about this housing problem that we have. But really, we should concentrate really on supplying serviced land. If we can, sort of subsidize that in local authority, and also, with the PPPs, the triple Ps, that like City of Windhoek and other council have, signed with the private sector. If the private sector can please reduce their profit margins, then we'll be able to have housing. A land that is affordable still, because at the moment it's really ridiculous.
Thank you.
The prices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Last, close us off, short and sweet.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Albertine Kauluma, a first-year student at the University of Namibia. I'm pursuing a degree in political science. So the doctor mentioned something in relation to alternative building technology. As the youth, or as an individual who's interested in venturing into solutions such as housing shortages in our country, I just would like some clarity on, from your perspective, doctor, is the biggest challenge with ABT the technologies itself, or building public confidence and acceptance of those technologies within the community?
Okay, thank you. Please just pass the mic on to Martin, and then we'll wrap up with one response, and we'll be more than happy to end off for the evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Martin. I'm also a first-year student, economics. And I think from my case, since I'm also part of the youth, most of the youth have sort of stressed out the question that everyone wants to know of my age. How can I grow wealth in property? How can I build my property portfolio in future? But why my question for Doctor is, what's one key takeaway? This 200-page report summary that you and Ms. Lina and the rest of the team spent countless of hours making, what is that one sentence, key takeaway that we can go home with and remember for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month? Just that one sentence. It won't take too long. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Doctor, would you wrap us up with that answer to alternative housing solutions and that one key pressing takeaway for the youth? Doctor?
Alternative building. It's good that you are interested in developing the technology. We need young people to come up with new technology. You see, when people talk about alternative building technologies, it's not only one technology. There are many technologies. Like in Kenya, they have gone into different things, interlocking bricks, not only panels. So there are a number of things people have come up with those innovative ideas. You know, we have got so much materials here in Namibia. We have got so much mud. I saw a college in Britain that trains people in mud bricks. So here we are walking around the Oceana's mud. But they are making money out of. That's a technology I bring here. So that technology was developed by someone. They've got a patent right on it. For you to get it here, it's not easy. Yeah, because they don't just want to sell it. We have had engagement with some of them number of times. You can see that they will not divulge much in terms of that technology. But we expect you students, as you struggle with your tests, don't forget to also be innovative and come up with technology. The housing sector needs, I know that I think I hear a number of economics commerce student here, and I see the professor here. He came with his students. Yeah, so you need to really come up with technologies that that can provide a solution. You know, our government is very much inviting. Our president has invited people to come and present proposals. So today, if you say, I've developed a technology that will bring a solution to the low-income housing, can I see how many people want to take that challenge? Okay, Ms. Kaoluma, come and see the CEO. She'll give you an assignment.
There we go.
Develop that assignment. So the other question, I'll let the CEO answer that one word.
One key, one thing for the youth, Madam CEO, that they will not forget.
Okay, I will just add on to the question that was asked on technology before I get to Martin's question. When Doctor spoke about it, one of the key things that he mentioned is about the pricing or marketing of alternative technology. So what is important there is that when we are saying this is the cost of the alternative property, have we factored in the land, the transportation, whatever the case, let's give the actual price. Because then more often than not, what is actually being said as affordable is a structure. But then the actual land and all those is not actually being communicated. The issue of acceptance, we have said it to say, the youth now is very dynamic. Think we might not, okay, I'm also a youth, but again, my level of youth, I might not, participate and appreciate an alternative technology. But then again, it goes back to what I said, to say, who are we targeting this for? So know your market, know your market, know who's supposed to take it, where are you taking it? I know we were studying one technology and we say, why it will not work here is climate. The climate changes. So there's a lot of factors that you have to put in place to then ensure that the solution that you have is actually viable. Then to Martin, the one word that I can say, which I think I said in my opening, is to say that as a country, we are doing very well in housing. We are doing well. So if in terms of investing, in terms of supporting government, getting your own property, whatever the case may be, we are not at risk at all. I know the talk now, the spotlight is on oil and gas, which is very good, but housing still need to house the players in the oil and gas. So housing is a place to be.
Okay, I quite like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of what has been an utterly insightful session, very educative. I have learned a lot, and I hope that you too have had some homework for you to think about. I just want to close off by reminding us of some of the words we said must be the spirit with which tonight's conversation takes place: accountability, affordability, accessibility, innovation, collaboration. I think we've done well to ensuring that those words truly came to life in this room. The CEO is here, her team is here. If you'd like to engage, have bilaterals, and think through what potential solutions going forward could look like, they're very welcome and open to talking with you. Once again, thank you so very much for your time, for your engaging presence, and really being interested about the welfare of the ordinary Namibian when it comes to housing. Have a good evening. Thank you very much. We have a wall of photo opportunity. If you would like to have a little, a fan moment with the authors of the report, please do come by and take a picture. Other than that, we have some refreshments outside. Say hello to someone, network, get to know each other, and we look forward to hosting you again soon. Good night.